The usage of the Chaderz Wood material is very straightforward. It takes advantage of the asset browser in Blender 3 and following. So first we need to take a look into the asset browser, and there we change from current file to user library. The user library is empty yet, and so we need to take the downloaded file into the user library. To do that, first we need to know where the user library is located. You change into the preferences, open the file path, and down below here you find the user library and the path to it. Either you can select a new path for the user library, or you copy the path, close this window, and open a new Explorer window. So paste the path into the folder and you have opened your asset library. Now you copy the file that you've downloaded. It's this wood.blend file. Just copy it into the asset library, and there you are. Now change back to Blender, refresh the user library, and there you have your materials. Now to use these materials, have a look at this single standard cube. I'm gonna stretch it a bit, and I'm gonna throw one of these materials onto my box. You may have seen that there has an empty object been generated. This is for the position of the texture. You can use it, you don't have to. And to see what's happening here, I activate the render view. So I'm gonna move the empty. And you see in the box here that the rings are moving. Okay, fine. So now we want to do something crazy. Go into the edit mode, press A to select all, and F3, type in bisect, and we cut a piece off, clear the outer, and exit the edit mode. And there you see that the rings are a perfectly aligned 3D material that is even inside of our materials. You further see that your edges are not so sharp, they are a bit soft. Now our box, our cut box, has to have a ground to stand on. So I create a new plane, scale it, move it a bit down so that our box is standing on our plane, even bigger. And then we throw one of the other materials, like let's take this herringbone onto it. Okay, fine. So we have our Parquet wood here, and to change the type of the parquet, just turn this type up, and there you see some different parquet materials. These are 4 or 5. The type 0 is just no parquet. Type 1 is this herringbone. So this is an irregular pattern. Type 3, again the correction, turn it up. There you have a regular pattern. You see all the planes have the same length, and they can have an offset here. as you like. And the type 4 is a squared material. I'm going to scale it up so that you see it better. And you see we have a subdivide which says how many subdivision planks you want to have here. The correction doesn't have any effect here. The width doesn't either. Gap size, you can change the gap size. You can let it disappear completely. This is true for every type of parquet. You can let the gap disappear, or you can say how wide they are and take a correction value for the vertical gaps. Okay. So much about the parquet settings. I'm gonna stay in this regular one. I'm gonna stretch it a bit. I like it better. Oh no, I changed to the irregular. These values, I think I'm gonna do a few changes in the future to make it fit better from one type to the other, but for now I think it works quite well. Make the gap just visible like that, and correction value, that's fine. Okay, let's go with that. Oh, by the way, the material, the wood shader, is based on 3 different nodes. These nodes are all the same in every material that you have here. Every material is using the same nodes, but with different settings. So you always have a parquet node to define what kind of parquet you want to use. You have the settings for the wood itself. We're gonna take a look at it later. And there's a setting for the mixer. The mixer combines all the information to the final material. You can define what color the gaps should have, something crazy, something less crazy. Let's do it in white, why not? You can say what roughness you want to have. Black means very glossy, no roughness at all, but I like it to be rough. So, and height says how high shall the gaps are, what height do they have. Black means it's very deep, white means it's up above. You need to know that the height of the wood itself is on the upper half of the grayscale. So from middle gray to white you have the height of the wood. Take a look here. This is the height of the wood itself, and compared to it, the height of the whole material is now with the gaps inside of it. By the way, I'm using Node Wrangler here, so I can make Shift Control click to make a preview of the different outputs here. Okay, so that's it. Now to the main part. The main part, of course, is the wood itself. I'm gonna crank the width up here. Okay. So the wood itself is generated with the thought to be as natural as possible. It's not 100% natural yet. There are some changes to come, especially for the knots that you see here. These are just dark dots. For a fast view, that's perfectly fine. but if you take a look into the details, there will be some advances in the future. So, what can we change? Nearly everything. Let's start at the top. We have a pen multiplier. Pen multiplier means I change it to 0 and change the scale a bit up so that you can see it better. What you see here is the center of the material. So if we move it, and there you can see this is the center of the material, and if we have the pen multiplier set to 0, then all the planks are aligned in the same position. So you can see it especially here for these knots, which are going from one plank to the other because it's all the same position. And once we change this pen multiplier, you see that every plank is getting a different chunk of the virtual wood, so that we don't have these this effect that the rings and the wood material itself is going from one wood to the other. Every plank is individual. Every plank has its own pattern. If we want to, we can change the center position. This is especially for the herringbone material. Then of course we can change the color. Something bright. Take this color and make it a bit darker, or even brighter, whatever you like. And okay, yeah, that's fine. Let's go with it. The ring scale, I've used it before, is to change the scale of the rings. You see, if you turn the value down, the rings get bigger. I'll make it more visible. As you crank it down, the rings are getting bigger. Turn it up and the rings get closer. The brightness random, R&D stands for random, of course. You see that the planks are getting the individual color brightness. If you want to have it at 0, they all have the same color scheme, but this is not very natural, so we turn the brightness random up to get a little difference between all the planks. Then there's a rotation random factor. If we turn it up, you see that the planks are getting a little bit of rotation. We go crazy. You see they are all aligned differently. Every plank has a different rotation. I don't like it too much, but I've seen it in reality that not all planks are perfectly aligned, so sometimes there is a little difference and you have the possibility to do it here. The growth random scale and growth random factor and the growth random details, they define how these waves are going. They simulate the growth of the wood. So if you crank the growth random scale up, you see that these waves are getting closer. Turn it down. the waves are getting smoother. You see. The growth random factor says how much the wood shall get a random growth factor, of course. Turn it up and you see the rings are getting more and more distorted. You can change the details if you say that your waves are too randomly. If you want to have it more synthetically, then you can turn the details down. I'm not a big fan of it, so I crank it up to the max and it stays there. The distortion by knots is visible around the knots here. You see that these knots are changing the rings. If I turn it down, you see that the rings are going right through the knots. And if I give it a higher value, then especially here you can see that the rings are going through the knots. Maybe the growth random factor is a bit too high. There I can see it better. The subdivision is about how detailed our rings are. If we turn it down to 0, these are just simple rings that go through our material. If we turn it up, then you see that our rings are hardly visible anymore. So let's go somewhere in between. There it gets a bit softer. Subdivision factor, let's turn it down a bit. Softness, yeah, sure, that's cool. So the softness is down. If we turn it up again, you see it's getting softer, of course. But to see what's happening here, I let the softness stay at 0, and now I turn it up, and you see that we get some subdivisions in our rings, which looks quite natural. I like it a lot. And then you can play with the factor and the amount to get the results you like. I like that. Okay, that's it. So much for the rings. Then there is a noise. First of all, you can change how much noise you want to have visible. This is a mixed node, and I like it most if both is visible, the rings and the noise, but if you like, you can even use a pure noise. Of course, you have to change the colors, as you see here. The black is not a good choice in this case. Somewhere here. Sure. The size, again, higher size values say that the material is getting smaller. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it works. So I take the brightness random a bit down again. That was too much for this settings. That's nice. Okay. Roughness, distortion, contrast, that's all to change the noise material so that you can define how your material should look. Then we have the knots. The knots are these black dots. You can, of course, define the color. You can define how far they shall be from one another. In fact, this is a size parameter. If you turn it up, then the size of the noise is being changed, and so if you turn it up, it's not just the distance but the size of the knots themselves, which you can then change again to a value you like. So distance and size are always to be seen together. The softness, it's clearly visible what's happening here. You change the softness of the edges. And distortion, you see, you just change the shape of the knots. If you have distortion at 0, then you have nearly perfect round circles here. Turn it up, and you have some knots then not perfectly round but a bit stretched, which is quite natural. This is not natural, of course, you see, but combined with a lower size and a higher distance, a lower distance, and turn the size down again and the softness down, and then we get something quite natural. Some knots here and there, not too many. I think that looks quite good. Okay, and next are the fibers. These are these dark stretches here. So these are the fibers too. You have two different settings for fibers. I crank the threshold for the fibers 2 up so that you can see what's happening here, and I crank the fibers 1 down. The color, I take something clearly visible like black and turn the threshold up, softness down, and there you see there are some fibers visible. So roughness, stretch. Where are my fibers? There. The stretch parameter says how stretched these shall be. The maximum is 100, and 100 means that each dot or each fiber is stretched the all way long. You can see these streaks are going all through the complete wood. Well, it's not very natural. If you like it, you can do it, but I turn it down a bit so that we have really elongated fibers. Softness makes it soft. What shall I say? The threshold says how many fibers we want to have. Turn it down and you get more and more of these dark stuff. We have an additional fiber setting. It's all the same like the fibers 1, but it's one more, so that we can use different colors, maybe something in the green spectrum. Make this one a bit softer. More. Yeah, that's fine. Again, we have distortion by knots. Maybe I'm gonna change that in the future version. The effect is not as visible as I've hoped for it, but you can see it a tiny bit here. There's a little distortion in our green stretches around the knots, but there has to be some work done in the future. And finally, we have our settings for the height. If you turn the height strength completely down, then you have no height at all. I'm gonna let my fibers disappear, just to make it clearly visible. So if I turn my height up, then you see that the light has more effect on our rings. And on our nodes and knots here, if I turn it up to +1 or down to -1, then they look either extruded or down into the material. The same for the fibers. It's not very visible, but it's there, I promise you. And the roughness, if I move my camera here so that we look into our light. So roughness is to 1. If we turn it down to 0, then you see that we have our reflections here. If I turn my height down like that, then you see that we have very clear reflections here. You can, of course, change the material shader itself if you want to give it more or less clear coat roughness, turn it down so that we have better reflections in here. Yeah, I think that's it. I hope this helps you to use this material properly, and I wish you some fun with it.